This is the ninth video in the ethics and legal considerations for animal chiropractic. This video, we're going to talk about informed consent. Now, I'm assuming as veterinarians and chiropractors, you're already fairly familiar with the idea of informed consent. So there's kind of a few general concepts first. Uh, you want to provide an appropriate amount of information, not so much information that you overwhelm the client. You want to give the client the information that they need to make the specific decision they're trying to make. You don't want to try to train them to the level that they do not need to be a veterinarian or a licensed chiropractor. The other comment I want to make is about communication. And the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that has taken place. It is important when you're getting informed consent to be clear in the communication. Be sure that your client is understanding and that your client has reasonable expectations. Um, And the only way to do that effectively is to have a dialogue. You can't just go into your sales pitch or your spiel about animal chiropractic. You have to be sure you are communicating and having a conversation with your client and make sure they are understanding what you are discussing. So, informed consent is an educational process. I think too often, especially as attorneys, we tend to look at this is about getting a signed form. And when you look at some of the regulations that require, like the Texas regulations that require a signed consent form, it does make you feel like this is all that it's about. But I really think it's an educational process. It's not just about talking about the bad things that may happen. It's also talking about the general nature of what to expect. What is a chiropractic adjustment? How do you expect the animal to respond to it? What could be the good results? What could be the bad results? Uh, what could be an indication that maybe something else should be tried? Um, so it really is about educating, and it's specific to the client and to the animal. It's not just a one size fits all. As you do obtain informed consent, you're going to find yourself repeating yourself quite a bit, but you also want to be sure that you are tailoring your conversation to the specific animal, to the specific condition that you are treating. Now, one of the biggest benefits of informed consent is if you do it properly, you build that doctor patient or doctor client rapport. Generally, when clients trust their doctors, they're not inclined to file malpractice claims. But when they do file malpractice claims, they usually show up at the malpractice lawyer's office complaining about how cold and aloof the doctor was, complaining about how the doctor failed to communicate, how the doctor failed to answer their questions, how the doctor failed to explain what was going on. If you provided good informed consent, not just looked for that signed form, you provided good consent, you got that good client rapport where they develop a trust level with you. And that's a wonderful protection from malpractice claims. So certainly getting informed consent takes time. Certainly, informed consent requires taking a chance that the client may say no. They may decide that they do not agree with you and they do not think the patient should receive the care that you are offering. And that's okay. That is the client's decision. It is not your decision, it is the client's decision. Now, certainly, if they're abusing or neglecting their animal, that may be something you need to report. You may need to tell them that you're going to report it. But other than that situation, it is the client's decision. If the client's deciding or choosing between traditional veterinary care and chiropractic care, it's the client's choice. And you may not agree with their decision, but it's still their decision and their right to decide. So we get informed consent because it's the client's freedom of choice. Client gets to decide. It's their right. It's their animal. It gives you a chance to educate the client. Also gives you an opportunity to demonstrate your honesty. Nothing screams honesty more than saying, this is what I want to do, and these are some of the bad things that may happen. If you are honest about what could happen, good and bad, you develop the client's respect. You also, again, help build that client doctor rapport and protect yourself from liability because the client's now accepting the responsibility of I knew what to expect, I knew what the risks were, and I accepted the responsibility rather than pointing to the doctor and saying, you made this decision on your own without any input from me and without telling me what could go wrong. So it's your fault and your responsibility that something went wrong. So it's very valuable as a way to protect yourself from malpractice claims. Uh, Here's the section from the Texas Administrative Code that requires a signed statement acknowledging that chiropractic is an alternative therapy. And the chiropractor or the veterinarian rather must inform the client of the conventional treatments that are available and their probable ability to cure the problem. And that signed statement becomes a permanent part of the patient's record. So here's an example um, of a form that I put together. There's nothing magic about it. You may certainly take this and tailor it to suit your needs to provide the essential information. And I think it's good to have it signed by both the client and the veterinarian. So the animal chiropractor knows that everybody is on the same page. You may even choose to add a signature line for the animal chiropractor as well. Now, from the veterinarian side, certainly in Texas and in other states that require some kind of consent form like this, you want to be sure that that becomes a part of your veterinary medical record so that if the state board ever comes to question your recommendation for chiropractic care, you may show that you had the appropriate authority or the appropriate consent in place. From the chiropractic side, I think these statutes all place the burden pretty directly on the veterinarian to obtain the informed consent, but it provides you as the animal chiropractor, it provides you the same type of protection from malpractice claims. And it also is just a good practice to also document the consent in your records as well. There's nothing wrong with documenting the consent twice. You probably don't want to present the client exactly the same form, but there's nothing wrong with having the client sign forms in both offices showing that they consent to animal chiropractic care. Consent form should be signed by the client in Texas, should be dated, should identify both the chiropractor and the veterinarian. Can be included as part of the contract with the client. If the consent is provided by telephone, it should be confirmed in writing as soon as possible. It should be also confirmed by a second witness listening in on the telephone call.